Oh, hello. I didn't see you come in. And welcome back to class. So this week, we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics to talk about in conceptual science, and that is time. I love talking about the deep time narrative our planet has. We are essentially going to be time travelers this week. So you were probably noticing that I was taking a measurement. Now, in part of the scientific method, we need to collect data. So that way we can understand what our hypothesis is because the data supports the hypothesis in the conceptual context. I was actually taking a look at teeth. Teeth are very informative types of body fossils. In fact, that's what we're going to be talking about throughout the week is fossils and some of their utility. So this is a tooth, and this tooth belongs to a rather large marine reptile. The type of marine reptile it belongs to is called a mosasaur. I actually am studying and comparing it to another mosasaur tooth. Now you're probably looking at me and realize, hey, these are two different types of teeth. And you're correct. The much more robust tooth belongs to a much larger mosasaur species called Prognathodon. It's actually one of my favorite types of mosasaurs to study. Whereas this smaller, slender tooth belongs to a different type of mosasaur called Plioplatycarpus. Now, when I take a look at these teeth, they tell a wonderful story. And they do fit within a model. Model fitting is one of the most important concepts I want you to walk away from in this class. When I take a look at the small, thin Plioplatycarpus teeth, the thin nature onto it, and there's not a lot of ornamentation, and it's got a really bulbous root. That bulbous root means that it's really well anchored in the jaw, but the thin tooth tells us that it was a specialist. It was actually a specialist in hunting fish, giant bony fish. As you can see in this piece of sandstone with a microscope, lots of little bits of fish. And so really, it's a physical model in my hand. When I compare it to the much more robust prognathodon tooth, it's got a blunt tip and a much larger base. So this tells me that that animal had a much larger head conceptually, and conceptually probably had a completely different diet or ecological niche, meaning it would probably want to go and consume hard prey items like turtles rather than fish. And we can take teeth when they're isolated and then compare them to close relatives and determine what may have been occurring on the global scale that made them successful in their ecosystem. For an example, I actually have this cast that I use for public outreach. When I use this cast, I like to tell a story of success. You see, mosasaurs are in the same group as snakes and monitor lizards. And we can conceptualize that by looking at not just the teeth, but the overall shape of the skull and how the jaw works. And can hypothesize the evolutionary relationships or the traits that change over time. That is one of the reasons why I love being a paleontologist, because I can actually go and investigate the model of success or unsuccess of different plants and animal groups that live in coastline settings. I can go and develop a model using geographic information systems and then test how successful or unsuccessful those organisms are. And we can use that by synergizing it with what we observe in the local geology. And earlier I mentioned that time tells a story. And in lecture, we are going to talk about that story. We are going to investigate the different principles that paleontologists and geologists use out in the field to interpret the succession of both the fossils and the rock layers. For example, I've actually got this nice deck of sleeved playing cards. And in case you're wondering, yes, your professor plays the card game Magic the Gathering. I have been playing this game over 20 years. But the takeaway on this method is that earlier in the class, we talked about that in rocks, they separate in density, with the heaviest separating out first, and then the first order, or the rocks at the bottom, are geologically older than those at the top. And so we're going to be using that principle to establish the concept of time and how it changes. And again, conceptually, for a lot of people, understanding on how time works on the geologic timescale can be a little difficult. Most people, when you bring in time, they think of the arms on a clock and how seconds turn into minutes, minutes turn into hours, and so forth. But on the geologic timescale, we're working on much larger units of time. But the process is still the same. It's a way for us to conceptualize and be able to organize our data that we collect out in the field to figure out how old these teeth are and how do they fit in to the layers. So in lecture, we're just going to go over the principles. And I'm also going to be bringing in interviews of other paleontologists and their specialties. And you're going to be walking yourself, with my help, through time. You're going to be looking at a lot of really cool changes in the world's biodiversity over time, and maybe experience something new, something you maybe have never considered about deep time. We're going to go on a walk through time, be time travelers, if you will. And then in lab, we're going to have a really interactive simulator. It's going to be called Surviving Extinction, where you will be able to select an animal of your choosing that is around in modern day times, such as a lion, a chimpanzee, or even us as humans, or a bald eagle, a penguin. And then you are going to track it from the earliest vertebrate ancestor and see, can you be successful over time and take that early tetrapod or vertebrate ancestor and evolve it over time and watch through, because in response to ecological shifts into a modern animal. So if you have any questions, please reach out either on Zoom, or you can swing by my office in person, or shoot me an email. I'd love to talk to you about this topic, as this is, again, my favorite topic we cover in the semester, because it allows us to gain insight on the past. And the past is the key to the present. All processes that occurred in the geologic past also occur today. And so we can actually use the geologic past to determine what our future is. All right, good luck and have some fun this week.